Folks, welcome in to the Bachelor Pad. I, of course, am your host of DFS Bachelor, and we're going to go over our Fanduel and Draftkings NBA slate for Wednesday, March 3rd. It is a 10-game slate, and actually pretty good. We only have two teams on a back-to-back, so good on the NBA. We finally aren't just riddled with one of these massive slates with a bunch of back-to-backs. First things first, before I get into anything, I want to say thank you to everyone. Robert, joining us live in the chat box. Those of you who make time live at these random times during the day, I really appreciate it. If you're rewatching the replay of the show, thank you so much for watching the show. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, be part of our weekly $50 PayPal giveaway sponsored by our friends at Tax Relief Advocates. Straight up, I just had a question for them today. They helped me last year, and I can call them anytime, and they still help me out. Give them a call, 1-800-411-9633. If you're worried about shit going on with taxes, I know last year was a strange year. Maybe the government's fucking with your money. Hit them up. They're the people to call. As usual, my entire player pool for this entire slate, which will evolve throughout the day, is available on Draft Dashboard. You can try it 30 days for $1. Lineup optimizers, cheat sheets, articles, research tools, all that stuff is available right down there in the video description below. What's up, Randy? What's up, Robert? Thank you guys so much for joining the chat box. A big cheers to you all. I really do appreciate you all. Obviously, the window licker of the night is Kawhi Leonard. Look, it sucked. For me, I didn't have a ton of him in DFS. What I did have was Clippers bets. And, you know, when you start the day out and Jaylen Brown looks real iffy to play and the Clippers are at full strength, you're like, oh, yeah, Clippers -4 makes a bunch of sense. I wish there was a magic wand. You know, I preach this all the time on the show. You want to follow someone on Twitter. You want to figure out a way to keep up to date with all the news throughout the day. You're going to get screwed. And then when it really sucks, when after the game starts, they announce a player out. And the only thing I can say is, man, I wish I had a magic wand that could know when a player is going to do that. But I will say this, Kawhi Leonard is a soft-ass bitch in terms of NBA players. He's very strange. So he's going to miss random games because, you know, his mom wants to play bingo or it's macrame night or, you know, Kawhi Leonard's a strange superstar, and it makes him very unreliable. It makes the Clippers very unreliable. And I agree that it sucks. I'm sorry for those of you who got burned by that. I wish there was a way I could just fix it. But unfortunately, I'm just, you know, a middle-aged man, probably going through a midlife crisis. Who the fuck knows? So just the Clippers, and it sucks. And he's definitely the window licker of the night. The Clippers are as well. If it's really a back issue, then they knew it was going on all day long and should have at least been listed questionable. I think it's real shitty. I think the NBA should come down hard on them. And it sucks, man. Yeah, Kawhi, your dog, that's fine. I think Kawhi Leonard, I can't fucking stand Kawhi Leonard. He's one of my least favorite superstars in the league. I don't have a lot of respect for these guys who make max contracts and think that they're, you know, franchise players, but sit out, you know, a third of the games for the year for load management. Like, tell that to Michael Jordan. Okay. Kobe Bryant. Those guys never, ever did that because they had respect for the game. And I just don't think Kawhi does. And he's got other interests, and it just is what it is. Bradley Beal, you know, I'm seeing that in the chat box before we get to the picks. I'll just address some of the things. Bradley Beal is a guy that's always overpriced. We talk about it all the time. Bradley Beal is priced very, very high, and he can fuck you over. It's called getting Bealed. We've talked about it for 4 straight years. And that is what it is. So let's get to the picks. Again, it's 10 games, so it's early on, and a lot can change. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at DFS Bachelor. Any important news throughout the day, I will have up there. Of course, the big story for today's 10-game slate is Toronto. Toronto's going to be without Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby. So they're going to be really thin in the backcourt. If I had to project a starting lineup for them right now, you're probably going to see Kyle Lowry with DeAndre Bembry, who's going to be some value, Norman Powell, Chris Boucher, and, of course, probably Aaron Baines at the center spot, and they're going to see a ton of minutes. So guys like Boucher and Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell, big boost. I think DeAndre Bembry has some value as well. That team's gotten hit, obviously, by the COVID protocols, et cetera. They're playing in Florida. They don't even play their games in Toronto. And, I mean, does it shock you that a team playing in Florida is having some COVID issues? Look at the Miami Heat as well. Florida is a fucking crazy place. That just is what it is. Beautiful place. My sister is at Disney World right now with my nephews, and so I hope everything's safe over there, obviously. So let's get into it. Luka is questionable for tonight against Oklahoma City. If he misses, obviously, guys like Jalen Brunson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Richardson, all these guys get get, a big boost. So it's something to keep an eye on here. Also, no LeBron. I haven't seen anything. So did LeBron get ruled out? I appreciate you guys telling me that. But so that's nice. The Lakers going to be in a bad spot. Of course, Kyle Kuzma missed last night, but we had plenty of notice. So I digress. Luka, it's back tightness. Luka's a pretty tough kid, and he tends to play through these things. And there's always upside going against Oklahoma City. I love Steph Curry against Portland. Portland allows the 5th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. And Solo DZ, you are absolutely right. Kristaps Porzingis goes off when Luka doesn't play because the offense will run through him. Bernie Trees, baby. You don't know anyone who has COVID in Florida. That's great. I think that's fantastic. I'm glad you don't know anyone there. I'm just saying it's a crazy state. People get eaten by alligators walking their dogs. Florida is crazy. All the crazy shit happens in Florida, right? I mean, it's just how it is. It's just a joke. I of course love all my people out there in Florida and hope everything is good out there. Trae Young on a back-to-back against Orlando. I actually do like it because I like scoring guards against Orlando. They allow the most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Kyrie against Houston. Now the big thing here is we know it's James Harden revenge game. It's his first game back in Houston. So you feel like he has a reason to show out. So I think the contrarian side here is paying up for Kyrie because he's got equal upside here in this matchup. So Kyrie could be an interesting pivot off of James Harden, who's going to be very chalky. I think he's in line for a big game. Trust me, I'm going to play James Harden. I'm not stupid. So I can go there as well. LaMelo Ball against Minnesota, absolutely. First of all, Minnesota's defense stinks. Charlotte is dealing with issues with Devontae Graham, Gordon Hayward, Cody Zeller. LaMelo Ball, rookie of the year. I mean, this kid is absolutely electric. 61 in his last game out in 32 minutes. The upside is there, certainly, against Minnesota. Kyle Lowry, we talked about this. Now, Detroit's been pretty good against point guards. 3rd in the league in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing point guards. And well, now here we go. We're just getting the news right now. So yeah, LeBron rest ruled out. Oh, that was actually announced 9 hours ago. So I need to wake up a little bit, but Gordon Hayward is now probable. So that's going to lower the Miles Bridges and et cetera. But LaMelo should still absolutely be a factor tonight, especially if Devontae Graham remains out. So Sacramento now gets a boost. The Lakers go from being a terrific defensive team to now being without LeBron James and being without Anthony Davis. So now Sacramento has the chance to excel. Now, De'Aaron Fox is too expensive on DraftKings. There's no way in fucking hell I'm paying $9K for De'Aaron Fox, but I will pay the $8,000 on Fanduel. So he's a much better Fanduel play. LaMelo's brother Lonzo against Chicago. Chicago's a terrible defensive team. Now, Lonzo's real up and down, and that's because there's a lot of mouths to feed in New Orleans. Look, you've got Zion. You got Brandon Ingram, Eric Bledsoe, Steven Adams up front. So it's a great starting 5. It's terrific. Really well-rounded starting 5. As long as that assist rate is there for Lonzo, he can hit value at 6'9" and 6'8". Kobe White against New Orleans. I like playing guards against New Orleans. He's 6K and 6'5". New Orleans allows the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing point guards / shooting guards. He plays a little bit of both. And Robert, you're absolutely right. It is impossible to keep up with the onslaught. That's why my hair is probably going gray. And just like a programming note, next Thursday, I will be out of town for 4 days. I'm going to Vegas. I'm getting the hell out. I haven't had a day off since June. I need a mental break. Absolutely. So I'm going to be off for 4 days. There will be no content or anything like that. I will be in Vegas making bad decisions and spending a shit ton of money. That's basically what's going to happen there. But yeah, even when you're up to date on all the news, there's no way any of us could have known yesterday Kawhi was going to be out. Just no way. And then they didn't even officially rule him out. They just didn't play him and said, it's just come on the fuck on. And then they rule him out 15 minutes later. Chicken shit by the Clippers, but that's what the Clippers do. They're the little step bitch of LA, right? It's the Lakers town. I'm a Lakers fan. The Clippers are the step bitch of LA, and that's why. Shit like that is exactly why. End of story. Dennis Schroeder. He's going to be huge tonight for Sacramento. He's going to be very popular without LeBron and AD. He's 5'5" and 5'9". Sacramento stinks defensively. I like Dennis Schroeder on a back-to-back quite a bit. 5'5" and 5'9". The offense is going to be the number one option on offense for the Lakers. Taylon Horton Tucker is another guy. Jalen Brunson, especially if Luka's out, has some big upside as well. MCW, Michael Carter-Williams had a great game, and I love playing guards against Atlanta. They're 27th against opposing point guards, a 38 in his last game, one of those slate breakers from the last slate he was on. If Luka Doncic ends up being out, I'll actually sprinkle in a little Theo Maledon, especially on Fanduel at 4-2. Sterling Brown will see some minutes for Houston. You know, John Wall and Oladipo should be alive in this game, so it's not a ton of value that I necessarily like down here. Let's go to the shooting guard position. James Harden, of course. It's his first game against the Rockets. It's in Houston. The Rockets allow the most fantasy points to opposing shooting guard. I mean, the stars are aligned. And look, he's going to be popular. He's expensive, but he's going to be popular, and for good reason. Massive, massive upside, as we all know, for James Harden. Probably the highest upside of any player in DFS outside of maybe Giannis. I don't know. Luka's up there too, but I mean, James Harden, massive, massive, massive upside. And we've seen the upside for Joel Embiid as well. 94. My boy Donnie is in here. And by the way, if you guys are missing NFL content, Donnie and I will be live Friday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, over at Sportsbook Review, SBR. You see the banner in the back. We're going to talk some NFL. And trust me, even if you think I'm an idiot, no one knows the NFL. If I could say anyone knows the NFL and follows it better and more closely than I, it's my boy Donnie. That's why I love working with him. So I appreciate you being in here, brother. Appreciate that very much. Zach Levine. Zach Levine against New Orleans. New Orleans allows the 6th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Now, Zach Levine's always a little overpriced. I will say a 58 and a 50 in 2 of his last 3 games against New Orleans. And it's a 10-game slate. So you're not going to see the massive ownerships. And it's an interesting pivot. An interesting pivot away from James Harden, who, again, is going to be chalky in his first game against Houston in Houston. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And, that's just how it goes. SGA, Donovan Mitchell against the Sixers. It is the one position. The Sixers are a terrific defensive team. We'll see if Tobias Harris is able to go tonight. He's missed the last couple of games with that knee issue. They do allow the 5th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. I don't play Donovan Mitchell all that much. I do think I'm kind of on the Shaq team when it comes to that. It's an unpopular opinion, but I don't think he's a winner. I know he's put up some massive playoff series, et cetera, but he's still wildly inconsistent to be considered one of these top guards. Exactly. And Randy Jackson's absolutely right. Like James Harden could, but it's James Harden against Houston. So I do agree, when a player puts up 80 fantasy points, they tend to have this massive regression with higher ownership, and that's what you want to avoid. But this is James Harden in Houston in his first game in Houston. No Kevin Durant as well. Like, by default, James Harden should get 50. I mean, that's just not 50 real points, but 50 fantasy points. I like Oladipo coming back the other way. So there should be some added incentive for Victor Oladipo, right? Like, hey, I'm the new guy here in town. I was part of that trade that sent James Harden over there. James Harden, we all know, is an absolutely god-awful, atrocious defender, and Houston could get blown out. I think you're right, Phil. It absolutely could happen. But I do think Victor Oladipo is interesting. When you get 50-point upside under 8K, you take that. In DFS, Terry Rozier, again, a shorthanded Charlotte team, a bad Minnesota defense, especially when Karl Anthony Towns plays, because like I've told you guys many, many times before, Karl Anthony Towns is probably the worst team defender in the history of the NBA. And I'm not saying that lightly. I realize there's been some bad defensive players. Isaiah Thomas, the second Isaiah Thomas, not the original Isaiah Thomas. Kyle Kuzma's god-awful. I mean, there's plenty of those players. James Harden is notoriously awful. Carmelo Anthony, awful defenders. But Karl Anthony Towns probably takes the cake there. Malik Monk just brought in the comment section. I think it's a great point. He's absolutely in play tonight. We'll get to him at small forward. But again, when they're shorthanded, the upside, the matchup, I don't mind Malik Monk. So you're absolutely right there. Some other guys here real quickly over at shooting guard. Bruce Brown, look, without Kevin Durant, this guy's starting. He's getting 30-plus minutes. He's got 30 to 40-point upside. And look, Houston allows the most fantasy points to shooting guards, et cetera. He's 5'3" on both sides. I don't mind Bruce Brown at all for Brooklyn. Tim Hardaway Jr., I think, could be value if Luka misses. Then I'm down with Tim Hardaway Jr. By the way, thank you guys. 35 people live in the chat box and just kind of the middle of the morning. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button. I appreciate all of that. as well. I normally don't play Kawhi either. I think he's like a Bradley Beal, is always overpriced and doesn't necessarily get you to 60 enough. And I think he's a mental midget, quite frankly. That's my opinion on Kawhi Leonard. He's a mental midget. Can't trust him. I hate the way he approaches the game. I hate the way he treats the NBA. I'll never agree with a guy who does load management every other game. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I think, when it's macrame night with grandma, Kawhi Leonard's not going to play, and I think it's dog shit. And I think it should tarnish his legacy. That's just my opinion. Taylon Horton Tucker, if we're looking for some value, he's 3.9 on FanDuel, 3,400 on DraftKings. Again, we just mentioned no LeBron, of course, still no Anthony Davis. Horton Tucker's going to see minutes, and he's got that upside. He's an offensive guy. They're going to need Taylon Horton Tucker's offense, so I think he's interesting. Luguentz Dort is a value on FanDuel at 3,900, not so much on DraftKings at 5.1. Isaac Okoro, the same thing, 3.9 on FanDuel, 5K on DraftKings. And, of course, DeAndre Bembry, who I expect to slide into the starting lineup tonight with both Anunoby and Van Fleet and Siakam out. DeAndre Bembry, even when Kyle Lowry missed a couple games a couple weeks back with that ankle issue, DeAndre Bembry is who stepped into the starting five, and I expect that to continue. He's at 3.8 and 3.7, so I do think there is some value there. Let's move over to small forwards. Yeah, and Patrick Bush, I get it. Yeah, and normally it's you don't want to play Kawhi because he's just overpriced, right? Unless it's the postseason. When it's playoff time, Kawhi is going to have a massive usage rate and be that half-court offense. That mid-range game is nearly unstoppable. But in the regular season, he packs it in. I mean, he plays 55 or 60 games a year. He won't play. He played his first back-to-back in 4 years earlier this year. Well, I don't know if Leonard's choice is set out back tightness. It's Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard could tell Tyronn Lue, I'm playing tonight, and he's playing. Like there's no one going, no, Kawhi, you're not allowed to play. If that doesn't fucking happen in the NBA. NBA superstars, especially on Kawhi's level, have more power than any coach or GM outside of the owner, which I promise you, the owner of the Clips, Steve Ballmer, wasn't calling up saying you got to sit Kawhi tonight. I can assure you that was not the case. Small forward, a weak position in a 10-game slate. It's kind of strange, especially with LeBron out. So you got Brandon Ingram at the top. Chicago's defense stinks. I don't mind Brandon Ingram. Gordon Hayward is now probable against Minnesota. Missed the last couple of games with a hand issue. Remember, this wasn't a knee. This wasn't an ankle. It wasn't a hamstring or a groin. It was a hand issue. So he should be right back to his full workload at 30-plus minutes. So I certainly don't mind Gordon Hayward against Minnesota. Norman Powell's in a great spot against Detroit. First of all, Detroit stinks. Second of all, Toronto is very shorthanded. He's going to get all the minutes he can handle tonight. Has legit 55, 60-point upside. I like Norman Powell, Detroit 19th against opposing small forwards. Some of the Detroit players like Sadiq Bey, like these young guys for Detroit, you're going to get these wild swings of output. You're going to get, so the Sadiq Beys, the young point guard, I'm forgetting his name right now for some reason. But you know who I'm talking about behind Dennis Smith Jr. Those guys, it's going to be a little bit easier on the defensive end without Anunoby and Siakam and Van Fleet, who's a pesky defender and gets a ton of steals. So some of these Detroit guys, Josh Jackson, Sadiq Bey, that damn rookie point guard who I can't remember his name for some reason right now. I don't know why it's slipping my mind. Who's been really, really solid for fantasy, especially those first couple of games when Delon Wright was ruled out. He's in play. Carmelo Anthony coming off a 54-point FanDuel outing, which is so fucking annoying. I mean, it's just annoying as shit. Now, Golden State does suck defensively. They're 21st against small forwards. But just like we just talked about, dude just had his biggest game of the year. Think I'm going straight back to that? Probably not. If I'm making 100, 150 lineups, of course, I'll have a little bit of exposure. Malik Monk against Minnesota. Minnesota allows the fourth most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. We talked about their defensive. Saban Lee. Thank you, Randy Jackson. Thank you so much. Coy and Randy Jackson. Saban Lee. Thank you so much. That was starting to really piss me off, messing with my mind. But I do like Malik Monk. Some other value guys. Josh Richardson, I think, could be interesting, especially if Luka's out. Again, Oklahoma City, bad defensive team. They allow the fourth most fantasy points to small forwards. He's going to play 30-plus minutes. And if Luka's out, he's going to see a ton more usage. So I do think if Luka does indeed miss tonight's game, I do like some Josh Richardson. And then some other value guys like Garrett Temple, see the minutes, but he's a single-digit Tony Snell type guy. Daniel House. battling a knee issue. We know he, got hurt in that last game and didn't return in the second half. So then guys like Jayshawn Tate, Sterling Brown, who we talked about earlier, these guys will get more minutes, more usage, opportunity, etc. And they're going to have to score points if they want to keep up with Brooklyn, especially against a highly motivated, in my opinion, James Harden. It's going to be an emotional game for James Harden. So there is those two trains of thought, right? Like, okay, he's back in Houston. He's going to try to show out and put up 80. Then gently caress that like button. I love that, Garage Junkie. That's a great comment. And there's also, hey, maybe it's too emotional. He's kind of a weird guy. Maybe he tries too hard. And title of my sex tape, there you go. And underperforms, title of my sex tape, there you go. So there's a lot of that stuff to consider when playing James Harden. But and I'll tell you, the fate of James Harden will be the super contrarian play. And if it works out, you could be dancing all the way to the money. But if you do and he puts up 80, then you're obviously going to be very, very sad. So it really depends on your risk tolerance. And what I would do is just play multiple lineups. And that doesn't mean spend more money. That just means if you play, let's say you play $5, $10 lineups a night. Instead, you play, $23 lineups or something. So you're still spending the same amount, but spreading out your player pool and giving yourself more of a chance here to hit that target that you're looking to hit. But James Harden's in a good spot tonight. Let's go to power forwards. We could get playoff Harden. Well, which playoff Harden? Because sometimes, like game 2 of a series, they're up 1-0, James Harden's going to go off. But if it's a must-win and it's an important game, James Harden is one of the biggest choke artists in NBA playoff history, aside from like Paul George and Russell Westbrook. I mean, those kinds of guys are a little bit worse. But James Harden in a game 7, I would never touch with a fucking 10-foot pole because he's going to go 2 for 20 from the field and gas out. Part of that is because the guy doesn't take a day off. He has way more respect for the game than a mental midget like Kawhi Leonard. Nonetheless, I digress. I could go off on Kawhi Leonard for hours. I can't fucking stand that guy. Power forward, Sabonis against Cleveland. I don't mind that. Zion against Chicago. I absolutely love. Chicago allows the 10th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. What's up, my brother Akbar? I appreciate you being in here. Zion in a nice spot. He's getting pricey. Zion's price is starting to rise, but he's a consistent 50, near 50 or more guy every week. So I could go there if, Leonard is soft. He's mentally soft and physically soft. I mean, it's the fact of the matter. I don't know what else to tell you. If you're a Kawhi Leonard fan or a Clippers fan and now you hate me, tough shit. I don't really fucking care. Bottom line is Kawhi Leonard's a mental midget and has no respect for the game. I just think he's a pathetic superstar. He's a terrific player. He's absolutely amazing on the court and can certainly be the best player on a championship team. How many times has he proved it? But I just hate the way he approaches everything. I hate the way they use him. A lot of that shit bugs me with Kawhi Leonard. Kristaps Porzingis, very, very valuable, especially. I mean, it's a great matchup against Oklahoma City in the first place. If Luka Doncic misses, then all the usage, all the offense runs through Kristaps Porzingis. And the bottom line is Oklahoma City doesn't have anyone who can stop him. What? Isaiah Roby, undersized Al Horford, Darius Bazley? No, and no. Let's see next. I think Draymond Green's overpriced. I know he's kind of made a turnaround before leaving that last game with that ankle injury after 12 minutes. If he plays, it's a good matchup against Portland, but 7-6 and 7-4, I'm just not ready to go there yet. Jeremy Grant could miss, meaning guys for Detroit like Jackson, like Sadiq Bey, etc. are Isaiah Stewart. All those guys become more valuable. Chris Boucher against Detroit. He's going to be chalky. I'm going to have a ton of Chris Boucher. He should see a ton of minutes. We know the massive upside he has. Detroit allows the 3rd most fantasy points to the position. So I do like Chris Boucher as well. Marvin Bagley against the Lakers. Now, typically like, oh, the Lakers, they're a great defensive team, especially inside. Well, we had Marc Gasol miss yesterday. It's a back-to-back for the Lakers. We'll see if he's back today. No LeBron James, no Anthony Davis. That's their interior defense right there. You're not worried about Montrezl Harrell or Damian Jones, who they just signed and are going to play. Markieff Morris. You're not worried about these guys. So Marvin Bagley has some upside against a depleted Lakers team tonight. I could certainly go there. PJ Washington, of course. Look, this is a perfect example. A 67 on Sunday and then a 9 on Monday, right? I mean, that's exactly how it goes. Now, again, it's against Minnesota. Still a little bit shorthanded. I do like PJ Washington in that spot. We'll have to see if Kyle Kuzma is available. The Lakers could be really shorthanded tonight. We're going to be talking, guys, Taylon Horton Tucker, Markieff Morris, fucking Caldwell Pope is obviously going to be more valuable. Wesley Matthews. I mean, the absolute array of dog shit players are going to be taking the court for the Lakers, which happens when you have two megastars and a high contract intruder. It's going to happen. And Kuzma, like, they can't afford a great bench. So it's going to be, a little dicey. Alex Caruso becomes more valuable. Jayshawn Tate, I actually like Jayshawn Tate, especially if Daniel House misses. 4-9 on FanDuel, 5-6 on DraftKings. It's been a rough go of it as of late. He had that 33 5 games ago. Then it's been 4 straight games where he's underperformed. Tonight could be the night he gets back on track against Brooklyn. Isaiah Roby, I don't mind that for some value on FanDuel. Big men against Dallas do great. They're just not good defensively. So the Horfords and the Robys and the Bazleys, or no Bazley, I don't think Bazley's even playing tonight, if I remember correctly. So there's some upside for some of those guys. Did I miss? Darius Bazley is playing, and he's a 5-4. Look, Dallas 24th against power forwards. They're terrible against centers. They struggle defensively. In the front court, Jared Vanderbilt is another one of these young players with these wild swings of production. So his last 4 games, he had an 8. That's right, an 8. Then he had a 34. Then he had a 36, then a 31, and then he had a 12. And you're going to get that with these young rookies. But fact of the matter is, Charlotte allows the most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. If he remains in the starting lineup and they don't start doing more weird shit in Minnesota, which is just a trash can, just a dumpster fire of an organization, Jared Vanderbilt could be a sneaky value guy at 4-4 and 4-7. Isaiah Stewart, I mentioned that again, especially if Jeremy Grant misses again. Isaiah Stewart will see 25-plus minutes. He's got the 30-point upside. 4 of his last 5 games, he's had at least 23 FanDuel points. He's sitting here at 4-4 and 3,400 on DraftKings. So Isaiah Stewart becomes very, very, very interesting to me. Maxi Kleba, once in a while, will go off. And again, Oklahoma City and Dallas, both those teams really bad defensively in the front court. One guy I want to talk about is Nicholas Claxton. I don't understand this huge run. Like, I know 2 of his last 3 games, he's hit the 30s, but he did that in 15 and 17 minutes. That's just not sustainable. So, like, I know Durant's out. I know they're giving him some backup center minutes. But if you think that every night he plays he's going to get 34 and 17 minutes, no. I mean, the game before that, he played 12 minutes and got an 8. So that's wildly unpredictable. If you're playing multiple lineups and you want to throw him in on DraftKings at 3,300 and hope it's a tournament pump play, sure. But there's nothing safe about playing Nicholas Claxton, like, period. Markieff Morris, much safer. He's going to start. He's going to see 30-plus minutes. That's where I'm going against Sacramento, 19th against opposing power forward centers. You're going to see a ton of minutes at the 4 and the 5 with all the injuries and rest things that are going on with the Lakers. And finally, at the center position, we got Embiid against Gobert. I think Embiid's a little too expensive. I really do. Gobert is obviously a good defender. He's not like this elite, like, shut down every center who comes his way. They're still 15th against opposing centers. I think there was something like 24th last year. So he does give up fantasy points. He's going for shot blocks, etc., quite often. So that leaves a lot of offensive rebounding opportunities available against him, etc. Joel Embiid, tons of talent, won't be highly owned tonight, especially with the slate with James Harden against Houston, etc. Vooch against Atlanta, I don't mind that. Now, this is not, the same Atlanta Hawks team. Of course, they just fired their coach. They replaced him with Nate McMillan, which is real boring, of course. And Atlanta's 6th against opposing centers this year. Clint Capella is there. This is not the same type of center thing. Gobert against Embiid, sure. The one argument you can make for Gobert is, what's the weakness of Joel Embiid's game? It's when he tries to get too involved in the ball handling and the passing. He turns the ball over far too much. So when Joel Embiid is turning the ball over, you assume the center going against him has a chance to get some of those steals, blocks, etc., because he's pretty sloppy handling the ball. Good for a center, but he shouldn't be doing it. But he tries to do it too much, which makes Gobert's upside, especially on FanDuel, where you get an extra point for steals and blocks, makes it a bit higher. Karl Anthony Towns against Charlotte. Is he a god-awful defender? Yes. But is he terrific offensively? Absolutely. Charlotte allows the 8th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Also keep in mind, 2 of his last 4 games against Charlotte, 76 and 83. Okay. They don't have anyone, like, especially if Zeller misses, they're trying to throw Biyombo and PJ Washington at Karl Anthony Towns. He should absolutely eat them alive. I love Karl Anthony Towns. Tonight, Jared Allen a bit pricey. We talked about Gobert. So here's his last 4 games against Embiid. 46, 50, 52, and 33. Again, Philly allows the fewest fantasy points to opposing centers. So there's risk there. Just going to say, yeah, there's certainly risk there. Some other centers as we go down, like Montrezl Harrell got the start, only played 18 minutes. I mean, just Frank Vogel can go fuck off. I'm a Lakers fan, but he's annoying as hell. I don't know what the Levine points prop is. You'd have to tell me what those points are, and I could tell you I like Zach Levine today. Again, wildly, he's very scoring dependent. He can certainly get there. I think he's overpriced in DFS. I'm going to have some exposure because I do, of course, like the matchup against New Orleans. But you'd have to tell me what the points prop is, and I could give you my opinion on that. Enes Kanter against Golden State, who allowed the 10th most fantasy points to center. He put up a 43 his last time out against Golden State. I do like Enes Kanter. Al Horford against Dallas. I sort of talked about this. Dallas allows the 7th most fantasy points to opposing centers, a 39 and a 37 in 2 of his last 3 against him at 6'2 and 6'3. I do think you can go to Al Horford. Steven Adams against Chicago. Chicago allows the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing centers. So I think I could go there today. Hey, yeah, put a little liquor in your coffee. Hey, I'm right there with you. I have a little bit of coffee in my liquor. That's how I did this. So cheers to you, Brian. Thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. DeAndre Jordan against Houston. Now, Steve Nash has been doing weird shit with this rotation. Last game he started, played 35 minutes, put up huge numbers. Houston still without Christian Wood. Thank you, if I can get my brain right. So Justin Patton has been starting at center. Look, Houston stinks defensively inside. I do think there's the rebounding and block shots upside for DeAndre Jordan, but there's risk because Steve Nash has been doing a bunch of wild shit with that roster, and that it doesn't appear that, even though Brooklyn or Houston has some talent there, it doesn't appear they care all that much about winning. And there you go. When you trade away, one of the top 5 players in the league, I guess that's the case. 30.5 total scoring points for Zach Levine. I think that number's high. I'm not big on taking players over 30 points a game. He's got a great matchup. Like I said, New Orleans allows the 3rd most fantasy points to the position. He's certainly got the advantage there. 30.5's high. I would lean yes that he goes over that, but I would be nervous about it. That's sort of how I would feel about that, Akbar, just to answer your question there. In terms of value at center, look, if Draymond Green isn't fully back from that ankle injury, we know that maybe a guy like Eric Paschal, probably not. Aaron Baines should see more minutes. Just with all the injuries there, they don't have the bodies, to bench Aaron Baines, so he has some upside against Detroit as well. And, of course, Justin Patton, 3-8 on FanDuel, 4K on DraftKings. Centers versus Brooklyn, centers versus Brooklyn, centers versus Brooklyn, and now you're getting value. He's played 57 minutes over the last 2 games. So it appears, now that they've released DeMarcus Cousins, and now that Christian Wood is still out, that Justin Patton's getting these start at center, and he's performing well. So, yeah, there's certainly value for Justin Patton. And, for the last 4 years, Brooklyn is terrible against opposing centers. So, yes, I like Justin Patton for some value today at center. Bismack Biyombo could be interesting if Zeller is out. Again, Minnesota allows the most fantasy points to opposing centers because, say it with me, Karl Anthony Towns sucks on defense. So that's our look at the entire card. Wow, just over 30 minutes. Again, I appreciate all your support. If you want my entire player pool as it updates throughout the day for not just NBA, but also for hockey, you can click that link in the video description below. Try Draft Dashboard 30 days for $1. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button if you haven't already done so. That helps a lot. Also, by doing those 2 things and leaving a comment, whether you do it live or if you're watching on the replay, you qualify for our weekly $50 PayPal giveaway. And also, don't forget, Friday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, myself and the great Donnie Rightside, we will be live over at SBR talking some NFL offseason talk and just getting our minds still slightly focused on football as we do something in to the other sports. Wendell Carter Jr., I'll probably pass on him tonight. Thank you all again so much for watching. I really appreciate all you joining me in the chat box, making me a part of your day. It's truly humbling. May the fantasy gods be with you all, and we'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's NBA slate. Thank you all again so much. Goodbye, folks.